Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Jay Bowman. Today I'm looking again at one of my favourite synths, which is the Mask1 by Kodamo. Yesterday Kodamo announced that they're releasing the Mask1EX, which is a desktop version of the synthesizer which I have, which I'm going to be calling the Mask1 OG, i.e. the keyboard version. And this is a very exciting announcement, and I hope it's going to be a huge success for Kodamo and will introduce Bitmask synthesis to a much wider audience. I got a request to do an introduction to the Mask1. What I'm going to do in this video is do a kind of your first 10 minutes with the Mask1. You just got it out the box, you just turned it on. What do you do with it? How do you use it? I get a lot of comments about the user interface. It's quite an unusual user interface. There's only 2 encoders, one of which is just for the volume. 23 buttons. How does it work? How do you get around it? So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to, as I say, talk you through your first 10 minutes of the Mask1, show you how to navigate through the patches, make your own patches on it. And if there's time left at the end, I might talk a bit more about the kind of philosophy and my thoughts on the Mask1 and Bitmask synthesis in general. So that's the way the video is going to work. I should say at the outset, I'm not affiliated with Kodamo in any way. I've made 2 sound banks which have been released through their website. I'm just an admirer of their synths. I have both the Mask1 OG and the Essence FM, and I think they're great. I think they're 2 of my favourite synthesizers, and the Mask1 in particular I find a really inspirational instrument. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm just going to talk about how to use it and get around it. And the other thing I should mention is obviously I don't have the desktop version. I'm assuming for the purposes of this video that the layout on the desktop is going to be pretty much as if you'd just taken this part of the Mask1 OG and put it in a separate box, which is what it looks like to me, but I haven't got one, I haven't checked that. So hopefully everything I say in this video will translate one-to-one from the Mask1 OG to the EX. If it doesn't, they shouldn't be that different, so hopefully it'll translate and make sense. So you just get the Mask1, you turn it on, you plug it in, you turn it on, and I expect you will land on this patch P00 Mega Mask. So this is the first of the factory patches. So the voice bank structure is split into 2. If I scroll anti-clockwise, I'll get to the user voice patches, which are patches you make and save and modify. So that's clockwise. As there you can see I've gone into the user section. If I scroll clockwise, then I'm going through the factory patches, which are the P section. And on the Mask1 OG there are 120 factory patches. I think on the EX there are far more, something like 330. So that's great. So when you have a factory patch, you can modify the parameters. Obviously you can change them, but you can't save over the factory patches. If you wanted to take a factory patch and tweak it, what you'd do is save it into one of the user voice slots, and then you can work on it as if it's your own patch there. So that's the factory patches. I'm not going to talk about those in detail because what I want to do today is focus on getting around the user interface to make your own sounds. So what I've done is I've scrolled counterclockwise through the user interfaces until I get to a blank slot. You can tell because it's called init. So now we are presented with typical init patch, which is just a single sawtooth wave. So let's look at the user interface, what's going on. As I say, only 2 knobs, so this one here controls the volume, and this one here is your general value encoder. and it's a notched encoder, which is great, and it's very light and easy to make very quick changes, but also because it's notched, you can make precise changes. So init patch. So let's look at these buttons. Now I'm not going to go through every parameter because this is just the first 10 minutes with the patch. You just want to get up and running and work out how to make a patch. So as you'd expect from an init patch, we have a single oscillator playing a sawtooth. So let's have a look at what's going on there. So behind each of these buttons is a menu. And the good news is that in each case, it's quite a shallow menu. There's only a few parameters you need to know. So if I push this oscillator 1 button, the first parameter is mask. If I push it again, then I cycle through the other parameters in the menu. I can also move through the other parameters in the menu by using these parameter buttons here, left or right. Now, if I use the parameter buttons, each end of the menu has a hard stop. So mask is the first parameter. If I push the parameter button left, I can't go past that. And then the final parameter here is loop for the delta envelope. If I push the parameter right, I can't go through that. It's slightly different if you're navigating through using the button itself, because you can just push through and you'll just cycle through and through and through without any hard stops. So, as I say, I'm not going to go through every parameter, just the essential ones for making basic sounds. So mask is the fundamental point of this synthesizer. So the way it makes sounds, it takes a sine wave and it manipulates the sine wave in different ways by applying a bit mask. And each bit mask has a distinctive sound. On the front panel of the OG, it sets out some of the most important or most significant bit masks, and you'll see that 7 is a sawtooth, 8 is a square wave, 15 we've got that half sine shape, 31 is a sine wave, and so on and so on. After you use this for a while, you'll get to memorize which bit masks make which sounds. So it's a bit different from having, just the 3 or 4 typical analog waves that you'd have. It's different from using FM, where you generally take sine waves and use FM to make different timbres. Or it's similar in some ways to a wavetable, because you have these different bit masks and you can move through the bit mask sequence. But as you can tell from that, they're discontinuous. They're distinct. Each bit mask is distinct. It doesn't blend between the bit masks like you would have in a wavetable. So let's stick with bit mask 7. So I'm not going to change that, but I just pointed that out to say, okay, we're making a sound with a sawtooth. If you wanted to make a sound with a square wave, you just change the bit mask up 1 to 8. But we'll stick with a sawtooth. So, as I say, each of these buttons has a menu behind them. Some of these have a shift function as well. So you see here above this shift button, it's got envelope written here. So the first 4 buttons, oscillator 1, oscillator 2, noise and filter, each of them have their own envelope, which is great. And this is one reason why I think a knob per function interface would not have worked for this synthesizer, but I'm not going to talk about that now. I might talk about it at the end of the video if I get time. But so let's say we want to change the envelope of oscillator 1. So we're already on oscillator 1 because the button is highlighted. If I now push the envelope button, I'm now in the envelope settings. So the first parameter is level, which is obvious enough. It starts on 20 by default. So there, I make the sound louder or quieter. If I push the button again, the next parameter is A for attack. Then we have D for decay, as you'd expect. S for sustain, R for release, and then we have a loop function. So each of these envelopes can loop as well. So we're getting into one of the things that makes this synth quite powerful, despite its basic interface, that each of these noise sources and the filter has its own looping envelope, which is great. So let's say we want to make more of a pad sound. Obviously we want to increase the attack. Let's go to 11. We want to increase the release, so again let's go to 11. Let's reduce the sustain slightly. Let's choose a value. How about 11? And let's try 11 for the decay as well. Okay, great. So far we've chosen a Bitmask and we've applied an amplitude envelope to it. Now the next thing we're going to do is add some vibrato. So we have two LFOs here. And as always with these buttons, behind each button is a menu. So behind the LFO we have settings for amount, speed, destination, waveform. We've got a delay and a decay setting for the LFO as well, which makes it powerful. So it's not your standard LFO because it's got those additional settings and some additional waveforms, but I'm trying not to get distracted and just concentrate on the first 10 minutes. So we want to add vibrato. Luckily, the LFO is already set up to modulate frequency by default. So let's just add some amount. I find 4 or 3 tends to work really well, and then the speed 11 or 10 works well. So here we have a pad sound with vibrato. Okay, next we want to use the filter. So it's a completely digital filter, but it sounds amazing. Behind the filter we have parameters as well. We have cutoff, resonance, mode, so we have low pass, high pass, band pass and notch, tracking, keyboard tracking, and then this extra function. So by default the filter is set to 12 dB per octave. You can have it at 24 dB per octave, but you've also got these additional fixed frequency second filters. So i.e. you'd have a 12 dB per octave variable filter plus, for which you set the cutoff yourself manually, or you can have these additional 12 dB per octave low pass or high pass filters. But again, I'm trying to keep this simple, so we'll just work with the 12 dB per octave filter and we'll reduce the cutoff. Let's apply some filter envelope to that. So to do that, I push the envelope button, and we know that we're manipulating the filter envelope because the filter button is lit. If the noise button was lit, then I'd be in the noise envelope. Oscillator 2 button is lit, you're in the oscillator 2 envelope, etc., etc. So we're changing the filter envelope. So for the filter, the envelope has a negative setting as well as a positive setting. So let's, you need quite low values to have quite a big impact on this, on the filter. Just need to add some release. and I'll add some resonance. Okay, so we have the basic patch already. What are we going to do to add to it? I mean, we've already spent more than 10 minutes, but let's say we just want to add some chorus and some reverb to the patch. So let's do that. So we have this FX button here. I push FX. There are two FX buses, 1 and 2. 1 tends to be for the mod effects. So you've got chorus. I'll just scroll through them so you can see. So you've got type of one type. You've got chorus. You've got distortion, bit crusher, and ring mod. And the only parameter you have is choosing between presets. So you've got 16 for each. So we've got chorus. You won't hear it though until you change the balance. So let's change the balance to 50%. And now we should hear the chorus. As you can hear, that's made the sound stereo, because the effects are all stereo. So great, we've added the chorus. We could choose between different, let's go to 7, which I think is another good one. Now let's add some reverb. So FX2, you have delay, reverb, and also you have distortion here as well. So by default, the FX2 is set to delay 1, which is a delay but it also has reverb built in. If I wanted just a pure reverb, let's go to reverb 1. That's great. So we're getting slightly beyond the first 10 minutes, but let's just, for the sake of argument, we'll just add some pitch envelope here. So in the pitch envelope, the settings are start value, speed, and end value. So I put the start on 1, so it's very slight. You've got negative or positive amounts, 1, so that means the pitch start above the bass pitch and go down, or you have negative where the pitch will start below the bass pitch and come up. I'm going to start with 1, and I'm going to have quite a slow speed just to add some more kind of tonal variation or pitch variation. It's quite subtle. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go into the mod section, and I'm going to use keyboard velocity to change the volume. And I'll put the amount on 15. And there you have it. That's your first 10 minutes with the Mask1. Hopefully what I've shown is how straightforward it is to actually make a basic patch on the Mask1. It's very quick. Obviously I've taken more time because I've gone through and tried to explain things, but if you just want to make a basic patch, then it's very quick. Once you learn all of the parameters are, well, you don't even need to learn all of them, just the basic ones you want to use, then you can come up with a sound that you want very quickly. You can also go much deeper, so maybe I'll make a future video on how to kind of take the next step into exploring what makes the Bitmask or the Mask1 unique, which is when you need to start getting into the different bit masks and the envelopes and manipulating the bit mask position. So that's something for another video. Now, I've got a bit of time, so I'm just going to talk very briefly about the things in general, about the Mask1 in general. I'm really happy and excited about this release of the desktop version of the Mask1. I don't think it's for me because I've already got the Mask1 OG. I like having it all in this compact package. I'd need a keyboard if I was going to use it anyway. And I like the multi-timbral setup that you have with the Mask1 OG compared to the desktop, which has a single layer or split, but otherwise is mono-timbral. Maybe in a future video I'll go into layers and splits as well, because that might be useful. People often talk about hooking this synth up with an external controller, so you have more knobs and faders to control all the parameters. And I think superficially that's a very enticing prospect, because what you'll have noticed is, although it's very quick to get around, you can only really change one parameter at a time. That's not quite true, because you've got a mod wheel, you can assign things to the mod wheel, you've got velocity and aftertouch, you can assign things to that. So you've got your encoder knob and those parameters. Unfortunately, you don't have a expression pedal, which would be another way to add more modulation options, but you don't have that here. So it's quite limited in terms of what you can change, how many parameters you can change at a time. Whereas obviously if you've got more knobs and faders, you can change maybe 2 at a time, 3 if you're pushing your luck. And there's a guy on YouTube, Harmonic Sonics, who has got a fader Fox, which he's hooked up to his Mask1. I'd recommend you watch his videos, because it does show that when you get the fader Fox, which has got access to pretty much every parameter at once, and you can modulate them, it does open up some new possibilities, which is great. But I think there is a logic to the philosophy that Kodamo have put behind this interface, in that it chooses you to focus one parameter at a time on coming up with a sound. Different people's brains work in different ways. I am very much a monotasker, not a multitasker. And so for me, this interface is perfect, because I have a series of things I want to do. I do them very quickly. I'm never looking at where I want to be on the keyboard. I'm always using this encoder. I never get distracted. And then, everything is laid out quite logically once you get used to it. So those are my thoughts on the user interface. As I say, I'm very excited by the desktop version of this synth. I think with the pricing they've put it into kind of Volca territory almost, which makes it, a no-brainer from my perspective. It's almost a budget option at that point, whereas the Mask1 pricing was very much at a premium point. Is it a perfect synthesizer? No, not yet. I've got a very extensive list of improvements that I would love Kodamo to implement into this synthesizer to make it even better. And these are all things which I would hope they could do through firmware to expand the usability, expand the options for this synthesizer. It could really be pushed into some even more experimental directions. They could really open up the sound design possibilities even further than they are now. That list of requests I've got is on the support site of their website, if anyone wants to look and see what recommendations I would make for how to upgrade this synth even further. But that list of requests is not to detract from the synth as it is at the moment. I love it. I use it nearly every day. It's great for making music on, it's great for sound design, whatever you want to do. If you just want to get lost in sound, you can do it with this synth. If you just want to make tracks where you've made every single part of the track yourself, you can do it. It's great for drums, percussion, pads, ambient, sound effects, leads, basses. You can do everything with the synthesizer. It has a distinctive tone, it has a kind of hi-fi digital sound, as I've said many times. You can get into some crunchy sounds by going into the bit crusher effects, for example. And if I start playing with the masks, hopefully you can see there how quickly you can take a very basic, generic patch, which could almost be made on any synthesizer, and very quickly take it into quite unique sonic territories. So that's the beauty of the Mask 1. I've spoken enough. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this video has been useful for you. If it has, please give me a like and a subscribe. As I say, I'm really excited about this announcement of the desktop. It's going to get this synth, this type of synthesis, into more people's hands so they can experience it. Hopefully that's going to also lead to future development of the Mask 1 itself, which owners of the OG will benefit from as well. So exciting times. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Goodbye.